The Hala'ib Triangle is an area of land measuring 20,580 square kilometers located on the Red Sea's African coast. The area, which takes its name from the town of Hala'ib, is created by the difference in the Egypt-Sudan border between the political boundary set in 1899 by the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium, which runs along the 22nd parallel north, and the administrative boundary set by the British in 1902, which gave administrative responsibility for an area of land north of the line to Sudan, which was an Anglo-Egyptian client at the time. With the independence of Sudan in 1956, both Egypt and Sudan claimed sovereignty over the area. Since the mid-1990s, Egypt has exercised de facto effective administration of the area as part of the Red Sea Governorate, following the deployment of Egyptian military units there in the 1990s, and has been actively investing in it. The description of the area as a triangle is a rough approximation. Only the southern 290-kilometer demarcation, which follows latitude 22 degrees, is a straight line, while the whole area is north of the 22-degree line. A smaller area south of latitude 22 degrees, referred to as Bertawil, joins the Hala'ib Triangle at its westernmost point along the latitude line. Neither Sudan nor Egypt claims Bertawil. The area is sometimes referred to in Egypt as the Sudan Government Administration Area, or SGAA. History. In 1899, when the United Kingdom held hegemony in the area, the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium Agreement for Sudan set the political boundary between the territories at the 22nd parallel. However, in 1902 the British drew a separate administrative boundary, which assigned administration of the territory of the Abada tribe south of the 22-degree latitude line to Egypt, and gave to Sudan the grazing land of the Befar tribe north of the line to administer. The Sudan-administered territory comprised about 18,000 square kilometers, including the towns of Hala'ib and Abu Ramad. When Sudan became independent in 1956, Egypt regarded the latitude 22 degrees territorial boundary of 1899 as the border between the two countries, while Sudan held to the claimed 1902 administrative boundary. As a result, both Egypt and Sudan claim sovereignty over the territory. Conversely, the area south of the line, which had been administered by Egypt, Bertawil, is a terra nullius, claimed by neither country. In February 1958, 2 years after Sudanese independence, with Sudan planning to hold elections in the triangle, President Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt sent troops into the disputed region for the referendum of the proposed unification between Egypt and Syria, in the United Arab Republic, but withdrew them the same month. Although both countries continued to lay claim to the land, joint control of the area remained in effect until 1992, when Egypt objected to Sudan's granting of exploration rights for the waters off the triangle to a Canadian oil company. Negotiations began, but the company pulled out of the deal until sovereignty was settled. In July 1994, Sudan sent memoranda to the United Nations Security Council, the Organization of African Unity and the Arab League, complaining about what it claimed was more than 39 military and administrative incursions by Egypt into Sudanese territories since Sudan had last filed memoranda in May 1993. In January 1995, Egypt rejected a Sudanese request for the OAU Foreign Ministers' Council to review the dispute at the meeting in Addis Ababa. Then, after an unsuccessful assassination attempt on Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak when he arrived in Addis Ababa to attend the meeting, Egypt accused Sudan of complicity and, among other responses, strengthened its control of the Hala'ib Triangle. expelling Sudanese police and other officials. In 1998, relations between Egypt and Sudan bettered somewhat, and the countries announced their intention to work together to resolve the Hala'ib Triangle dispute, with increased cooperation between the security forces. Later that year, though, Sudan accused Egypt of harassing Sudanese citizens in the area, a charge which Egypt denied. Nevertheless, by March 1999, the countries were in diplomatic discussions aimed at improving relations between them. During a visit to Egypt by Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir in December 1999, a joint communiqué was issued pledging to solve the Hala'ib dispute in an integrational brotherly context. In January 2000, Sudan withdrew its forces from the area, effectively ceding control of the border zone to Egypt, whose forces have occupied and administered the area since 21st century. In 2004, Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir claimed that despite his nation's withdrawal in 2000, and Egypt's de facto control of the triangle, the area still rightfully belonged to Sudan, which had never relinquished it. We did not make any concessions. The proof is that we have recently renewed the complaint to the Security Council, he said, according to the press. Al-Bashir iterated the Sudanese claim of sovereignty over Hala'ib in a 2010 speech in Port Sudan, saying, "Hala'ib is Sudanese and will always be Sudanese." The Eastern Front, a Sudanese politico-military coalition comprising the Befar Congress and Free Lions that recently signed a peace agreement with Khartoum, has stated that it considers Hala'ib to be part of Sudan due to its population being ethnically, linguistically and tribally connected to that country. The head of the Eastern Front and Befar Congress, Musa Mohammed Ahmed, has declared that the issue of Hala'ib's sovereignty should be decided by international arbitration in a similar manner to the issue of sovereignty over Abyei between northern and southern Sudan. In October 2009, the Electoral Commission that prepared a comprehensive plan for Sudan's general elections in April 2010 declared that Hala'ib was one of the Red Sea state electoral districts and that its people should exercise the constitutional rights and register in order to participate in the general elections. Voter registration did not take place in the Hala'ib Triangle area because the team from the Sudanese Election Commission was refused entry by Egyptian authorities. In December 2009, the Sudanese presidential assistant Musa Mohammed Ahmed was barred from entering the border area. Ahmed's visit was intended to assert sovereignty over the triangle and inspect the situation of the people and provide moral and financial support to the members of the Sudanese army unit trapped inside since the occupation began. His remarks were the first official recognition that Sudanese army personnel remained inside the area of de facto Egyptian control. Ahmed also asserted that the Hala'ib Triangle is Sudanese and would not be forsaken under any circumstances. The government of Egypt is taking steps to close the Egyptian-Sudanese trade center of Al-Shalatin and move it to the border control pass point on the 22nd parallel, which has had its facilities enlarged and its administrative manpower increased to handle the Egyptian-Sudanese land trade. By doing this, trucks bringing goods to Egypt from Sudan will not be allowed to unload the goods in Al-Shalatin, as in the past, but instead at the Hadaba border pass point. Wadi Halfa is another border pass point west of the Nile River at 22 degrees north. In 2009, the Egyptian Electricity Authority was building a line to supply the city of Al-Shalatin with electric power from the main Egyptian grid to replace the generators being used there. This line will extend in the future to Abu Ramad and Hala'ib. Since May 2010, a new paved road has connected the triangle to Port Sudan. It was reported in the Sudanese daily Al-Ahram today on the 22nd of April 2010 that Al-Tahir Mohammed Hassarai, the former head of the Hala'ib Council and a member of the Bisharan tribe who was campaigning against the Egyptian military presence in the Hala'ib Triangle, died in a hospital in Cairo after having been detained by Egyptian security forces without trial for 2 years. A delegation of the Bisharan tribe stated to the Sudan Media Center that 7 of the members were also in detention. Mohammed Isa Saeed, who had been in custody for 6 years, Ali Isa Abu Isa and Mohammed Salim, detained for 5 years, and Hashim Othman, Mohammed Hussein Abdul Hakam, Karam Mohammed Tahir and Mohammed Tahir Mohammed Salah, each in holding for 2 years. In July 2010, it was reported in the Egyptian newspaper Al-Masri Al-Yawm that the chiefs of 3 tribes in the Hala'ib Triangle, El Abada, El Basharia and El Befa, supported the Egyptian claims for the area, stating that they are Egyptian and not Sudanese citizens, and that they have all the rights of Egyptian citizens, including national identity cards, the right to vote in elections and to serve in the Egyptian military. On November 29, 2010, an open letter was sent to the President of Sudan by Mohammed al-Hassan Okai, who had been the parliamentary member of Hala'ib in 1995. From Hala'ib itself, the letter was written on behalf of the Bisharan, Hamadorab and Hala'ib tribes and complained of the forced inclusion of 20 villages that had been administered under indigenous civil society structures into 2 Egyptian electoral districts. The letter further complained of the siege of Hala'ib, the fact that its inhabitants live within barbed wire and that anything from Sudan is refused entry on the premise that Hala'ib is Egyptian, and that the tribe's camels are not allowed to travel and graze for pasture in the ancestral lands of the Bisharan from Hala'ib to the neighboring state of River Nile in Sudan. The Egyptian government converted the village of Hala'ib to a city, and various civilian projects are under construction. Mamdou Ali Omara was elected by the local inhabitants as representative for the Hala'ib area in the Egyptian parliamentary election of November 2015. Settlements. The major town in the area is Abu Ramad, which lies 30 kilometers northwest of Hala'ib on the Red Sea coast. Abu Ramad is the last destination of the buses that connect the area to Cairo and the other cities of Egypt such as Aswan, Marsalam and Cana. The only other populated place is the small village of Hadaba, southeast of Hala'ib town on the coast. Al-Shalatin is an Egyptian town just on the northern administrative boundary. The closest Sudanese town south of the disputed area is Oziaf, located 26 kilometers south of latitude 22, the political border line claimed by Egypt based on the 1899 agreement. Ecology and geography. In the Hala'ib region, Afrotropical elements have the northern limits at Gebel Elba, making it a unique region among Egypt's dominating Mediterranean and North African ecosystems. There is also dense cover of acacias, mangroves and other shrubs, in addition to endemic species of plants such as Biscutella elbensis. The highest peaks in the area are Mount Elba, Mount Shelal, Mount Shendab and Mount Shendade. The Gebel Elba mountain area is a nature reserve declared by Egypt in a decree signed by the former Prime Minister Ahmed Natsif.